Arts and Entertainment on Friday magazine for this week. And we have a very, very special guest today. We have Lauren Fagan, who is an Australian opera singer making her mark on the world stage. Good morning, Lauren.
Good morning, Leanne. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining in with us today. You have been one of the lucky people to get back into Australia, I believe, because your career was booming in Europe before lockdown. So tell us, what have you been doing?
Well, this year's been very strange, but it hasn't necessarily all been bad. So at the beginning of the year in February, I was in Norway at Bergen National Opera, about to open up as my debut as Vitalia in La Clemenza di Tito. And yeah, just 1 week out from our opening night, we were all sent home when Norway went into lockdown, and very quickly London went into lockdown. So I spent the majority of the year there, but did make it to Munich, where we did have one incredible production of the Seven Deaths of Maria Callas at the Bavarian State Opera, which was amazing. And then since October, I've been back in Sydney with my family. So yeah.
Yes. So you got to do one thing last year, and that Seven Deaths of Maria Callas, that was the one by Marina Abramovich?
Yes, so it's like her opera debut. I think that she sees herself as very, very connected to Callas herself. They both had bad relationships with their mothers, I think, and both suffered incredible heartbreak, which she said that she nearly died, and Maria Callas obviously did die of a broken heart. So it was 7 opera singers who sang Callas's most iconic arias, and I got the lucky job of singing Casta Diva at the very end, which was incredibly nerve-wracking, but an amazing experience.
And how did you get cast for that? Because you're a soprano, aren't you? So she had to find a soprano for that song.
Yes, I think that she would have listened to some of my recordings. However, she actually doesn't have that much knowledge about opera, so it was more the conductor that we had who made the choice. And I actually took the role from someone else because she was already in a different performance and had to pull out. So it's kind of those things where someone else's misfortune was my good luck in that case.
Yeah, and how wonderful. And how was it working with Marina?
She's definitely one of the biggest personalities I've ever met in my life. And she'd always want to tell me incredible stories about the things she's done. So I think she's lived with Aboriginals in the outback for about 2 years.
Wow.
And she lived with them. So she always wanted to talk about this time that she had with the Aboriginals. And then she also spoke about her wonderful installation, which I think was in New York, where, yes, people would just come in. Any stranger from the street could come in and sit opposite her and just look deep into her eyes and into her soul. And I think there were like such incredible responses to this type of art that she did.
Yes, and I've seen a documentary about that, and people would just be staring into her eyes, and all of a sudden a tear would roll down her cheek, or there would be an expression. And the gallery audience, for want of a better word, were standing there watching, and it was almost like watching paint dry, but you're waiting for that moment of change, a change in one of the faces, and it was quite suspenseful, really. It was really quite something. So what an amazing woman, and what a privilege to work with someone like that, and her privilege to work with you as well. So how long have you been a professional opera singer in Europe?
I've actually been based over in London for nearly 10 years now, which is crazy because it feels like only a few years ago that I was getting on the plane about to go and begin my studies at the Guildhall School of Music. And this is the longest time that I've been back in Australia, and it hasn't necessarily been a bad thing at all, because finally I've got some performances coming up in Australia, and it will be my first time performing professionally here.
Oh, really? Your first time ever? So what are you doing next?
I've got a recital there's a kind of innovative company that's come out of COVID in Sydney called Live at Yours, and they've just planned these intimate concerts in people's homes, and sadly, because of the latest restrictions, they've moved it now into the Village Gallery at the Rocks. So that'll be just a recital with lots of Russian songs, German, French songs, and then the following week, I'm hoping, if the borders open, to make it to Adelaide, and I'll be singing Samuel Barber's Knoxville, Summer of 1915.
Ah.
Yes, and then hopefully that will all go ahead. And then the next week, which is looking much more likely, is the Sydney Symphony Orchestra. I'll be singing with Simone Young conducting and singing Beethoven's Al Perfido.
Aha, so Simone has made it home too.
I think so. She might be in quarantine as we're speaking right now, for all I know.
Yes, because some time ago we interviewed Isla and there was a concert coming up with Simone conducting in England. So I'm glad she's still working too. That's good news, isn't it? That our artists are still working, because we all know the situation where artists were kind of left a bit in the lurch in terms of income here in Australia. But at least there's Medicare. We can be all be grateful for that. So was there anything you had to postpone?
To be honest, this year has been, I've definitely learnt acceptance and patience and just what is within my control and what's not within my control. This whole year I was meant to be from Norway. I was meant to go to Bordeaux, and then that contract with Mark Minkowski was meant to travel to Versailles, to Israel. So yeah, it was quite, and then I was meant to be making my debut as Gretel at London's Royal Opera House. So it's been a pretty sad year in a lot of ways.
Disappointing.
Yeah, lots of things have been cancelled. I'm not really sure whether any of them will be rescheduled, just because, as we all know, like opera schedules are planned for the next 5-10 years. So they can't just move them back a year, because then that's unfair to the people who are meant to be in that following year. So, yes. But it is what it is. Everyone's in the same boat. And so I'm just keeping on practicing every day and trying to stay focused and just be ready for when we finally can get back out on the stage.
Yes, I was going to say, how do you keep your vocal instrument up to par when there's less going on? You know, that's it's a bit like the tennis players in lockdown, I suppose. It's a bit, you've got to keep practicing, haven't you? Because it's such a physical thing that you're doing.
Definitely. Like this year, actually, I feel like I've undergone a lot of growth, because I was working on lots of technical exercises, which sometimes I wouldn't necessarily have enough time to do when I'm running between contracts. And I also had some really nice help from my mentor, Sherilyn Kamali, who's one of the amazing opera coaches in Sydney. And she said, well, why don't you go and learn these roles that you might be singing in 15 years' time? You could learn like the Marschallin from Rosenkavalier, something that you might sing in 10 years' time. And now you've got so many months to work and get into the language, and that's what I decided to do.
That's very clever. Be strategic. Yeah. That's great. Now I'm going to backtrack on something you just said then. You said that you were going to perform at Versailles. Was that in the Opera House at Versailles?
I think it was. I'd have to double check.
Because I visited and I didn't think that performances were being held there. And even in its day, only a few performances were held in this beautiful Opera House in Versailles. Fully wooden, the acoustics were amazing, and it could convert into a ballroom. It was just the most incredible piece of architecture from the 18th century I'd ever seen. And the reason they said that the only a few operas had ever been held there was because Louis XIV was going broke and they needed too many candles to light the place. And when they were restoring it, it was all covered in wax. Like the walls were covered in wax, which actually preserved it really well. So
that's so cool. It was actually this week that I was meant to be in Versailles. So I hadn't even looked about where we were going or anything. It didn't even get that far because, we've known for so long.
If it was, it would have been incredible because it's a completely wooden room and for its day it was designed amazingly. What is the most amazing venue you have performed in? I'm a bit of a venue freak. I visit opera houses wherever I go. I don't know why. It's probably because my father took me to the Sydney Opera House before it had finished. And then the next year he took me back for one of the initial concerts all the way from Queensland. Wow. Yeah, it was really wow. And ever since then I've been fascinated by opera houses.
I think like London's Covent Garden Opera House is definitely the one that feels like home to me. It's not necessarily a very small opera house, but I love that one just to sing out into, but actually it was Bordeaux's opera house, which it looks like a cake inside, like a multi-layered cake.
Wow.
So I was really excited to sing in that one, but hopefully something will happen again in a few years' time. So
yes, absolutely, and it will, and you're planning ahead, which is great. So, quick question before we finish. How did you know that opera was for you? Could you sing naturally and you got some lessons maybe and someone suggested it? Like, how does someone fall into opera? Because you don't meet... I know quite a lot of opera singers actually, which is kind of weird in a way because there aren't that many of them.
I think when I'm over in the UK, you often meet opera singers who've got parents that are playing in orchestras or working for the BBC, and that kind of makes sense that they've been introduced to this world of opera.
Sure.
But in Australia, it's not as common to have. Definitely not in my family. Everyone that watches opera now and comes to my recitals, they've all found it through me. So I think as a child, I was definitely the child that got my brother and sister involved in every kind of play or musical I was trying to put on. So there was always that kind of element of wanting to perform in my blood. And after doing different kind of musical theatre, singing training and trying a few instruments, eventually around probably 18 years old, I found that I was suited to classical technique, and it was just with the help of amazing teachers and coaches that eventually, by the time I got to 24, I felt at a place that I could go and audition over in London, and that was the first time that I actually dedicated 100% of my life to opera. And I think it was the perfect time for me anyway, because I had enough life experience and also a little bit of money saved up, which is not a bad thing with this kind of career. And so now it's 10 years on from there, and I still am 100% committed to following this very difficult career.
And you're going amazingly. Now, Lauren, I was introduced to you by the Tait Memorial Trust. Tell us, how have you been involved with them over the years?
Well, the Tait Memorial Trust, they helped me when I first moved over to London and gave me a very generous grant to help with just the living costs. And actually this year, they were kind of the first forerunners who put forward the idea of doing a live concert streamed in the Australian High Commission in London. So me with another 3 Australian singers all performed there, and we got to put that concert on the Melbourne digital concert platform as well.
Yes, and it was fantastic. It was really fantastic. So if there's any of that floating around online or on YouTube, check it out because it's really, really great. Now, tell me, do you need to have a certain physicality? Like, do you need a certain strength of your lungs or a lung capacity? Some people are really tiny and they're opera singers and some people are not.
It all depends on the type of voice that you have. So if you're a soubrette soprano, which is not my voice, I'm more a lyric soprano, you're generally singing the role of maids, and these type of people are very, very small. So there are tiny opera singers, but then when you get to the heavy duty guys who are singing Wagner and have to be on stage for, it's the marathon of opera. Yeah. Normally they're not fat, but they are strong, kind of solid people, and I think you actually have to have that behind you if you want to.
Muscularity.
So I'm naturally like a very strong, sporty person. That has been my background, and I think it works in my favour just because I haven't had to ever think about breathing. It just happens naturally.
Oh, isn't that lucky? Isn't that fantastic?
That's lucky. Yeah.
That's amazing. And what do you love about being home in Australia now you're here?
I'm very close with my family, so every day I'm just grateful to be here with them, and we've got all our golden retrievers here, so it's quite chaotic. But yeah, we live up near Palm Beach, so we've actually been in we were in the red zone just recently and had another lockdown here. Yes. But I couldn't really compared to my London lockdown, because every morning we would go surfing and go for a run on the beach, and I thought, if this is lockdown, then I can take it, I think.
Yeah, that's right. As long as you've got some outlets, it's okay, especially if they're out-of-doors ones. Well, we're lucky that we're in summer too. I think that's a really
Definitely.
Lucky one. How was the flight home? Were people tense on the flight, or were they happy to be getting out?
It was incredibly stressful. Everything went completely smoothly for me, and I made it back with absolutely no problems. But I'm part of this Facebook group, which is Australians in Quarantine, and you just hear these nightmare stories every day about people getting bumped and people arriving at the airport and then testing positive and things and never being turned away. And it was really stressful, and I only relaxed once I got on the second leg of my flight. Yes. And then the quarantine, it's not a nice 2 weeks, but if it's keeping our country safe, then that's what we have to do for now.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Tell us, who do you most admire in opera, and what are the other art forms that inspire you?
In the opera world, I am a big fan of, there's a girl, she's not even that much older than me, but Rachel Sorensen, and she sings a lot of the same repertoire as I do. I just love the way that she has her whole family who come around with her to all her contracts, and she just seems to be 100% the best mum, and then also having this incredible career. And she's very open and shares all her tips on how to improve her voice, how she sings the way she does. So yeah, that's very inspiring.
Yes.
But also I like Tony Pappano's work ethic has also influenced me a lot. He just is a workaholic. I think I've heard a rumor that he'll walk in from a 15-hour day and finish conducting an opera, and his wife has to literally just take him out of his suit because he's already playing again at the piano, getting ready for something the next morning. So it's quite insane. Other art forms, I love going to see plays, and if I can, I love to go and see the ballet as well. So everything has, I would love to be more graceful, so it's nice to watch the ballet dances.
Yes, it is, isn't it? It's beautiful. And also, it's beautiful classical music too, so...
Oh, it is.
It's just wonderful. So how can people follow you if they want to follow your career?
I've got Instagram and a website and Facebook page. And yeah, I think all of us kind of lost a little bit of the will to keep them updated this year just because it kind of seemed a little bit pointless. But I think now that I've got all these nice things coming up in Australia, it's time that I got that all organised again. Yes. It's www.laurenfagan.com, and on Instagram it's Lauren Ash Fagan.
Lauren Ash Fagan. Yep.
Yes.
Okay. And I must say your website is very glamorous. There's some very, very beautiful photos of you there, looking incredibly glamorous in the most gorgeous gowns I've ever seen. So it's worth looking at the site, even if you don't listen. But I would encourage everyone to listen, of course. Now, Lauren, thank you for joining us today. Please let us know when you get to do something in Melbourne, because I'd love to tell our audience all about that.